everyone that we will be recording and just started recording, so we can make this available to everyone in the community afterwards. We'll make sure the link is shared and available to everyone if they can't join us. But there's a lot of great information tonight. But first, before I get to that, I just want to recognize some of the staff that I have here this evening, administrative team that helped do all the work to get us to this point. So I'm just not going to go in a particular order. It just happens to be the way they are on my screen. Susan Giltari from the middle school is here with us, and John Adams from the high school is with us, assistant principals. Krista Gulick is also here, our curriculum coordinator and master of everything. Krista is here this evening. And Brian Ernest, principal at the high school, as well as is here this evening for our administrative staff. And I do see several other staff members here. Thank you for joining us as well. So the purpose of this evening, Krista, could you share your, I know you want to look at our lovely faces all evening, but we're actually going to share our screen and make the slideshow available to everyone. But we have several purposes this evening. And one is to really inform the community about what we've been doing. And Krista, if you want to advance to the next slide. I always like to outline what our goal is. And one is to talk about the history of the decision. Don't worry, it's a very brief one. The outline, the process going forward and how we're going to create this shared vision. You're going to hear me talk about a phased program, phase 1, phase 2. Then you're going to talk about what that makeup is. Then we're going to update of the work that's done so far. With the principal selection, the logistics, entrances, office assignments, and the schedule that the scheduling team led by Krista Gulick has been feverishly working on. And then moving forward, what are the tasks ahead of us? And this is not a one-year project, and this is definitely not going to be completed anytime in the near future, but we have broken it into 2 phases because we do know how do we get the doors open in the fall, and then how do we continue to move forward with the district in the vision we want. So I'm going to jump right into the first one, which is the history of the decision. I see a lot of familiar names, and I know that you guys are involved in the local politics and you pay attention to a lot of things that are going on. So thank you, and bear with me if you're familiar with the story. However, this year, the budget process went very smoothly, right up to the point where we started the conversations with the budget committee. And that was awesome. The budget committee had some vision, and they really wanted to take care of the taxpayers of Epping. And they gave us a directive. They gave me and the school board a directive to cut $765,000 out of our budget. And as you can imagine, that's a large portion of money to come up with. So I then approached my administrative team and I said, look, how do we do this without negatively impacting students? I know that might be an impossible task, but the first goal is to come up with how do we impact our programming the least, what we offer students, how do we not lose opportunities for our students, how do we make up this difference and still move forward with the direction that we want to move forward with. And we put our heads together and we brainstormed. We met several times. Then I met with the school board who came with their list of things to do. And we ended up developing this plan that you have before us. And that was to eliminate one of the administrators at the high school, middle school level. And just because the decision came about because of this financial thing, what I really want to emphasize is it doesn't mean it's not the decision that we wouldn't have come to or that we don't support. We do support this decision. And as you'll hear me say many times tonight, and others have said it, this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to reflect on what we do well and what we need to improve upon. I think we have a lot of great strengths at both the middle school and high school. And I also think that there's areas that we can improve upon. And by going through this process, it may not have been the way we wanted to get to this point, and we might have wanted to take a couple more years or some natural attrition to get to this point. But the point is we are at this point and we're making the most of it. And I think after you hear what we have to talk about tonight, I think you're really going to support this as well and think that this is the right thing to do for our students. It's the right things for our community. And we met the directive of the budget committee and we came in with a fiscally responsible budget. So that's kind of the brief history of how we got here. It was a decision that I and the school board made after we reviewed all the other options. And we felt that this would minimize the impact to our students. We intentionally did not come back with things like cut sports or cut the music program to get the community all riled up. we felt that that wasn't the right thing to do. So this is what you have before us, and I'm actually excited about the process, and we've done a lot of work so far. One of the main things is, how are we going to get the job done? Well, that's really outlining the process going forward. And that is, we're going to create a shared vision. This isn't just my vision. This isn't just the principal's vision. This isn't just the staff's vision. This is a shared vision. And we're going to create a committee, but it doesn't stop at that committee. The committee is going to be made up of students, parents, and faculty, as a lot of our committees are. But let me talk to you about how that committee is going to work and how it looks a little bit different. Those committee members are going to make up different subgroups of different areas. First thing they're going to do is how to identify the goals for each year. And they're going to report out on the progress that they're making toward those goals. We're going to have subcommittees made up of that. It might be a guidance team, and how do we redesign our guidance department? It might be grading. We know that grading is a big thing, and we might have a subsection of that committee talking about grading moving forward. But in order to tackle this, we can't tackle everything at once. So we need to identify what's reasonable this year, what's reasonable going forward. What we've done, and you're going to see already, is that phase one, we've identified a lot of the things that we know that we have to get done now, like principal selection, logistics, and scheduling, and those types of things. Susan and John have been working on even the handbook already and getting that ready for the fall. So those are the things we know we have to do in order to get open and ready to roll. But there are some things that we know we're going to have some time to work on. You're going to hear about a flex advisory period tonight and what we hope to do with that advisory program. That advisory program won't be in place this first year, not to the level we want it to be. But over the next couple of years, we're going to develop that, and we're going to identify other things. And that's what that committee is. So first and foremost, we're going to be looking for volunteers to be on this committee. We need a student voice, we need parent voice, and we need that faculty voice. And together, they're going to help guide this process and create what those goals are, how we're going to make progress on them, and who's going to undertake which tasks. But it doesn't end there. We're also going to create a faculty advisory committee, parent advisory committee, and student advisory committee. Krista, can you go to the next slide, please? This slide kind of shows what I'm talking about. You have the overarching restructuring committee made up of the students, parents, staff, and community members. But then you have these subcommittees. And this is where we really get that feedback. I had a student advisory committee when I was principal, and then I enacted it in other places I've been. This is made up of students. It is not a student council. That is not their role. Their role is part of student governance, though, as part of the larger picture. You want an honest opinion, give it to a student, and they will give you that feedback. So as the larger committee starts up with ideas, they're going to start bringing it back to the Student Advisory Council. Students are going to have a voice. They're going to say, yeah, we like this idea. We don't like this idea. We might even pilot a few things with a small number of staff, and the students have an opportunity to talk about that and whether it's working or not working, or what else do we need to do. The same is true for a Parent Advisory Council. This is not a place for just parents to talk about their concerns. It is a place to be meaningfully involved in the process. What is this? This is a shared vision. What do you want out of our school? How do you see this combining of the buildings? What do you think our strengths are? What areas do you identify that we need to work on? And then that information goes back to the larger committee, obviously, and that helps sets those goals. Now you kind of see how this works. The faculty advisory is the same thing. Typically, schools have always had faculty advisory councils. They've done a great job of directing schools and coming up with decisions and moving school forward. However, now we need a process that encompasses all the voices of all the stakeholders, and that change is a shared creation, and that's what you have before us. So we're going to be asking students to be part of that student advisory council, parent advisory council, and the faculty advisory council. Now, here's the beauty about this. It is the committee. You're going to make a commitment. You need to talk to, you're going to make a commitment to be on it. We can't have changing members every other meeting, right? So that committee is going to have a bit of a commitment to it. We're going to post the agendas ahead of time. So Brian might post the agenda and say, today in Student Advisory Council or next week in Student Advisory Council, here's the topics we need to talk about. The students who are interested in wanting to talk about those things, they're going to come and they're going to participate. There's no selection process. There's no limit on number of students that can participate. The same is true for the Parent Advisory Council. They might want to talk about sports, and that agenda item, we have a lot of parents there to help contribute to that. And that's okay. That's exactly how this works. And that's exactly how we get through this process. The other piece about this process that you need to know is the agenda is shared. So if students have a topic or an item that they want to bring up, they have every right to bring it up. And then we talk about it. They might want a place to have I don't know, hacky sack or privileges pushed all the way down to freshmen. I don't know. They're going to have to go through the process, and we're going to talk about it. John right now is working on, hats at the high school, middle school, and what's the student voice on that? What's the faculty voice? And then later on, what's the parent voice on that? And so we're already starting to get our feet wet and using this model to help guide those decisions. And so it is a meaningful way to be part of that moving forward. So, Krista, you read my mind. So, first off, we are going to do questions at the end, and I know I talk fast and sometimes people forget their questions. So at this point, I don't mind opening it up for questions about two of the things that I talked about before we move on to number 3. Does anyone have any questions about the decision, how we got there, or about the process and how we're going to guide this going forward?
Bill, this is Michelle Mylott. Would those parent advisory committee hours be something that works with working parents?
It's usually a mix, Michelle. I will tell you. As you know, there's always the dilemma of wanting committees right after school, because that's convenient, obviously, for school staff. And then there's Parent Advisory Council, which is made up mostly of parents, and we wanted to make it convenient for you. So yes, we will make them in the evening as well. I will tell you a funny story, Michelle. I had the same question once, and we made 2 of the committee meetings in the evening, and we had less participation in the evening than we did actually during the day. So, but we will try it and we will see what happens. And then also there's a way just to, communicate to the Parent Advisory Council and bring up ideas ahead of time, even if you can't make it, so we will definitely make all the efforts to make that accessible.
Thank you.
All right. Well, there is a time for questions at the end too, and we're going to create some opportunities throughout the process later on for people to email in or submit their questions too. So let's get to update of the works done so far. Well, first off, we needed to identify the principal. And we went through a process, because at the time we had 2 principals. We had Kobe Troidel and Brian Ernest, and unfortunately for them in the budget process, there's only room for 1 principal to move forward. And then we created a selection process, and we're very happy with that selection process. Unfortunately, due to illness, Kobe Troidel has withdrawn from that process. But we still made Brian earn his spot. We still made Brian go through the process, and Brian came out on top, and we're very excited to have Brian lead that team. He knows both the middle school and high school. He's had experience at both levels. And I think the team that he's complemented with Susan and John, I think we have one of the strongest administrative teams moving forward, and we're very happy with that principal selection of Brian Ernest, and you're going to hear from him later tonight as well about different things that are going on. So that was the first piece that we had to solidify. We're not going to jump to schedule yet, but I just want to say about the schedule, that was going on right from the start. We started that right from the beginning, because we knew to make this work, we had to come up with a common schedule. And there's a lot of advantages to that common schedule, and you're going to hear about those when that is presented. But before we get to that, the other thing that we wanted to talk about is just simple logistics. Where are the office assignments going to be? Where are the entrances going to be? Where, I'll tell you before I turn it over to Brian, is as an outsider coming into the building, I do view it as one building. I have always viewed it as one building. We have the middle school gym right next to the high school office, and we have the cafeteria that's already shared by both sets of students. So we already have middle schoolers walking all the way over to the cafeteria. And then you have the high schoolers walking over to the nurse that's shared by both as well. So we already have this common core center of the building that has already and has always been shared by both. The piece that I do find funny, and people have heard me share this story before, is making those poor high schoolers park in the middle school parking lot and then run in the rain all the way around the building. That I've never quite understood why that was that way. And so we're going to be looking at what the best configuration of offices are to best meet the needs of our staff. So Brian, why don't you talk a little bit about that process so far and where we're at with that?
Great. Thank you, Bill, and thank you for the opportunity. To date, we have had a lot of questions, and we've been meeting on a regular basis. It happens that John and Susan started meeting on Tuesdays, which happens to be the same day that I meet with Bill. So we meet together, the three of us, and then I meet with Bill, and we've been meeting as a team for since the beginning. The scheduling team has also been doing their work since the very beginning of this decision. Logistics is a long and big word, and I think we're going to be looking at what's the safest and most common sense way to have students enter and exit the building. We have student drivers, we have buses, we have early dismissals and privileges and all kinds of things going on, but there needs to be a central location for folks that are coming into the building and going out of the building. So right now, we're looking at office space, we're looking at administrative assistant support. Looking at where's the best place for our assistant principals, where's the best place for special education guidance. One thing I can say is that everyone on that team has made a commitment to the organization. And I'll start with myself. And I told Bill, it doesn't really matter where my office is, as long as I can help the team. And I think that's a sentiment that is from everybody on the team. So right now, currently, we're looking at all the roles and responsibilities of each of those members of that team, our administrative assistants with attendance, scheduling school due, managing paperwork, front desk, customer service in and out of the buildings. And we'll be making a decision shortly as to what is going to be the most efficient way to do that now that we're combining buildings. And when I first came here, I took a tour around the building, and it took me about 1.5 years to get used to all the ins and outs. So I do know the building quite well, and most of what's happening in the hub, you have your nurse, you have special education and guidance, and right in a central location. So the building really is designed for that. And we'll get into a little bit more of that, but I want to thank the members of the team. I want to also thank John and Susan, who I've had the pleasure of working with. Susan for 6 or 7 years now, and John for the last 3 or 4 years. So I do agree with Bill. I think it's a good team, and we've already begun the process, and the ball is in motion, if you will. So I'm going to kind of step back and let Krista talk a little bit about our schedule, and thank her and the scheduling team, because they have put together a draft schedule that really makes sense, and that's been done with the help of teachers and administrators from both buildings. So without further ado, Krista, I'll let you take over.
Thank you, Brian. So we had representatives from both the middle and the high schools. We had somewhere around 22 participants on the scheduling committee. We started by identifying similarities of the current schedule, current being pre-COVID, what we wanted the schedules to be, what they were last year. We then moved on to identifying some of the non-negotiables. What were our priorities? What were some times that we couldn't change? For instance, the SST bus, start time, end time, things like that. And then we just started generating drafts. I had everybody go into small groups to try to come up with as many ideas as possible. I wanted everyone to think outside the box and be really creative. And we got feedback from the middle school staff and the high school staff after we had come up with a few drafts that were workable. We narrowed it down to 3. And from there, we took that feedback, made the changes that needed to be changed, and came up with one draft that the entire committee felt comfortable with. It is probably no one's most ideal schedule, but that doesn't exist, and it was satisfactory, and it's going to meet the needs of everybody. And so that's what we're going to use moving forward. So let me show you what that looks like. Oh, it didn't click. Why didn't it work? Okay, sorry. I had it so it wouldn't come up all at once. So let me walk you through this. Some features to note here. We have what we're calling a skinny day on Mondays, where we have skinny blocks. They are shorter than the typical block schedule that we've had in the high school. And it allows every period to meet on that day. And so we did this for a few reasons. One, it gives the week a beginning of being able to check in with all students. So there's an academic benefit to that, as well as a social emotional. It also allows for, if we have a 4-day week, the day that would get skipped would be this Monday, even if it's not on a Monday. So if we have like a voting day on a Tuesday, we would skip the Monday schedule. And then that way it's equitable between the A days and the B days, where in the past we've had, you know, if we have a snow day or something on an A day and it happens several weeks in a row, I don't know if snow days even exist at this point, but if that happened, there were some inequities about which classes were being missed and which could be meeting consistently. And so that solves that problem as well. This also provides just one more opportunity for teachers to see their students, because when you do a 5-day week with only 2 days switching back and forth, what ends up happening is you either see them 3 times a week or 2 times. This gives everybody the opportunity to see everybody 3 times. So other important things to note, I'll talk about the block schedule in just a minute. I'm still looking at Monday. One of the things we felt was a priority was the whole person, whole child in this case, whole student, and adult as well. So building in those breaks so that students could eat, just decompress, they could transition. We also have the flex advisory, which we'll talk more about. That's gonna have structure to it. It's also a time for reteaching. Every block for all of the students in grades 6 through 12, all the blocks are universal, except for this color-coded grid here in the middle. It's really only one block. It's the block 3. And when the 9th through 12th graders are at lunch, the 6th through 8th graders are in a class, and then they swap. So that 6 through 8 is eating, 9 through 12 eating. They're not mixing. And so this is the only block of time that's not shared. So for instance, if we had say we had a 7th grader who was taking a math class in the high school, they wouldn't have math in this block because it's not a universal block. It would work in any of the other blocks. So this is the only time that it's not everybody is in the same place. So that's the skinny day, that's on Monday. And then the rest of the week would alternate between A and B. So in a typical 5-day week, we would have our skinny block on Monday. We would have A day on Tuesday, B day on Wednesday, A day on Thursday, B day on Friday. So just like it is in the high school right now, we have blocks 1A, 2A, 3A, and 4A meeting. The other 4 periods meet on the next day. A key feature of the block schedule is that we also included a morning meeting time. This was similar to the thinking behind the break, something that we found to be incredibly important for students to make that successful transition from home to school, checking in social emotionally, checking in academically, and just starting the day off on the right foot instead of going at a million miles an hour as soon as you walk through the door. So that's going to be a really purposeful time making sure that students' needs are being met and they're developing really strong connections with adults across the building. It's very important. There's also a break and flex advisory in both of these days. So they're identical except for the classes that are meeting. Similar to the Monday schedule, 9-12 will eat, 6-8 are in class, then they swap. And then the day ends with a universal, everyone's in their 4A or 4B. I will say that the timing, if you're looking very closely at the times in the lunch, we are making last minute changes. So this is not a final draft. This is our working draft at this time. So there is a discrepancy of the timing during lunch. There was an issue that bubbled up that we needed to fix just today. And so that will be ironed out, but the only block of time that isn't shared is that middle chunk that's blue and green. Did I miss anything, team?
Krista or Brian, can one of you explain why lunch is 47 minutes and why we held on to what we affectionately call super lunch and the importance of that?
Oh, Brian, you should talk about super lunch.
I can't take all the credit for Super Lunch, but Super Lunch is one block where we were able to offer a lot of options for kids last year. And pre-COVID, it really worked out well where kids were able to do pretty much, they could quiet read, they could go to the gym, they could, our upper kids could leave for lunch and come back, but we had a lot going on. We could get extra help during that time, or they could do some quiet reading. So there's a lot of options for kids with that one lunch. And we just felt like we want to bring that back. It was popular with the kids. And they were able to sign up for certain things. So, John, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add. I know that in surveying our kids and teachers, they all felt like it was really a positive for Epping High School.
Yeah, Brian, you pretty much covered everything. I guess the one thing I might add is we found that with our freshmen, I don't want to stereotype, with our freshman and sophomore boys, a lot of them used that time to go to the gym and burn off some energy. And so we actually saw sort of a diminishment of behavioral issues in the afternoon. So I think it was really positive for the school and for the school community.
Susan, can you also elaborate why this was beneficial to the middle school and what you learned this year from having students in so much more outdoor time that wasn't into our schedules before?
You read my mind. Yeah, I was just going to actually, again, if you are looking at there's 72 minutes for this or 46. We too, I guess at the middle school could consider that to be a super lunch as well, if we want to use super language. What we have this year with COVID, we had students spending time outside, and I think we've talked about it for years, and finally did it. And I think the idea of having students outside to get fresh air was a benefit to COVID and helping students kind of burn some energy because they are so restricted with our, guidelines and expectations for social distancing. And all teachers, and I think even students too, really found this to be really beneficial. So we will continue with outdoor time for students, and our super lunch. As you can see, we have some delineation of when grades are eating because we are splitting up lunchtime along with some time for reading, along with some time for recess or outdoor time. So we're really hoping to continue that tradition and really allow these kids some time to be active. We think they need that.
Thank you, Susan. Krista, do you have anything else to add, or are we ready to open up questions just about the schedule portion of what was just presented?
I just have two things. One, this is a very surface level schedule. There are lots of little details that still need to be worked out. So for example, Susan's explanation of what's happening during this 72 minutes, that's not written out explicitly in the schedule, but those decisions are either made or being made and will continue to meet our expectations that we are meeting the needs of students and adults throughout the building. And then the second thing I want to say, because I'm sure someone is thinking it, is are we going to make kids choose between recess and band? The answer is no. We have Sean on. He already identified when band can be meeting and it's not in conflict. There's no hard choice that a kid's going to be given. So we're already aware of that as well, that's important time. They're not choosing between that and going outside. Okay, yes, we can open up to questions.
Anybody have any questions for any of the team on the schedule? Any areas you don't understand or you'd like us to elaborate on?
So this is Michelle Mylott again, another question. So you said there would be no conflict between band and going outside. Will there be a conflict between band and specials like there is this year?
Thank you for that question, Michelle. So if you look at our schedule, what's I think has been really great about this process is we've really met and worked collaboratively with our colleagues. Julie Morin, who does scheduling for the high school, and I met to discuss, okay, when will this be? When will band be? When will chorus be? We brought Sean into that so we could take a look at this. So if you look at the, let's say the A-B day schedule, the block schedules, you'll see that there's 3A and there's 3B. 3A will be, and Sean, correct me if I'm wrong with this, the A days will continue to be days for chorus or our choral groups. And then the B day will continue for band. So you can see that that is prior to any of the lunch for middle schoolers, and it's after lunch for the high schoolers. Does that answer your question, Michelle?
Yeah, so what would the kids be doing that aren't in band or chorus during that time?
At the middle school, we are planning, and again, we're still working through logistics of all of this. But the team leaders and I actually have met to discuss this. We would be using this as an intervention block. We would also be using this for enrichment for our students, and again, band and chorus as well.
Okay, and then a second, and it's more of a comment than a follow-up. My concern with the Skinny Monday is that my high school is going to have homework due for every single class on Mondays. And I already know her homework load on weekends for just half her classes is hard. So I'm kind of a little bit worried about this being tough for the kids, having to have homework for all of their classes on Mondays.
I think that's a really great piece of feedback, Michelle. And maybe it is something that we take to advisement and speak with our teachers about due dates for assignments. Would they not be all due on, A days or on Mondays? Would assignments not be due for students? That should be something that we think about. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I was just going to piggyback off that, Susan. That's definitely probably the first consideration every teacher would have, is like, that's maybe not the safest or best idea for students. So why don't I make it my A day or B day when I actually have the block to make that my work due day?
Sean, nice suggestion. So it's not just about the schedule, but it's what is the practice implementing that schedule of when we make assignments due. So thank you, Sean. And the other thing that I want to comment on, and it's not really so much part of this presentation so much, but we value the middle school philosophy around teaming around a child. And so Sean brings up a great example where I think traditionally middle schools do a really good job, where they talk about when assignments are going to do, when assessments are going to happen, and they try to space them out so it doesn't overwhelm a child all at the same time. And those are things that we want to consider at all levels, what's best for the child, and move forward with that. So thank you for that suggestion. And that's exactly what we're going to continue to do is have teams of adults surrounding our children, whether that's in advisory, their math teacher or their science teacher, and create those opportunities to have conversations of, what do you see happening? Well, I see this. And then that's where really we can help support our students when we start seeing something. And that's something we value at the middle school level, and we want to continue with that. And we want to create more opportunities of that at the high school as well, as we move forward with this model. So nice. Other questions about the schedule? All right. Well, then I'm going to turn it back over to Brian, because now he's got a laundry list of things to give some updates on. Krista, if you could move it forward one slide. Brian's going to talk about what the value is of these different things, of obviously combining the resources and creating opportunities for our students. That's one thing that this model is really moving forward with. And Brian's going to talk a lot about that. It isn't just about efficiency of combining teachers and administration, but it's also everyone is given the task about how do we make this the model we want in the future? How do we support students when they move when ready? How do we continue to erode the age graded model of our teachers are organized by 9th grade? Well, if we continue to organize our teachers by 9th grade, we might as well say we believe in the age graded model and we're going to continue with the age graded model. And clearly that's not what our hope is. Our hope is that we start looking at things and say, when are children ready for this? When are those opportunities there for our students? And by having all of our schedule, except for that lunch, super lunch kind of block, three block, that creates more opportunities when those students are ready, but not just within the middle school and high school, but within their grades themselves. So simple things like we don't necessarily call it freshman English. We're going to start calling it English 1, and who's ready for English 1, and what are the competencies that we want them to complete by when they are done with English 1. So those are creating many more opportunities, and this schedule is going to support those. And you're going to hear about, and we're almost there, the flex advisory going forward. So this schedule kept in mind, not only what do we need now, but how can this schedule also help support us as we're moving forward? So Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the moving forward section.
Thanks, Bill. Whenever you are tasked with creating positive change, you got to kind of have an idea what that might look like. So if we begin with the end in mind, which is competency-based education, once we develop our portrait of a graduate, which will be done collaboratively with the community and the school, then we can kind of anchor back and clarify our vision and set our goals and create what I really, really like is that triangle of leadership where we're including the community, we're including families and students and our staff, and we're going to build the school in that reflection. So when we start to develop that, we're going to develop a sense of community 6 through 12. We're going to develop school goals, and we're going to anchor back to that common vision of what we want our kids to know and be able to do when they leave Epping High School. So that's the exciting part. To do that, you have to build your infrastructure. So that we've already begun. We have to look at our schedules and our supplies and equipment and our staffing. So we started with our schedule. The true advisory model is something that may have been in place before I got here or been touched on, but I don't think it is complete. And I think there's work to be done. So we can develop that. We have a time slot for students. So part of that time is going to be devoted to meeting our school goals. And one of those is social emotional learning and the development of a flex advisory program, 6 through 12. So that is one of our tasks. So that schedule allows us that time frame to implement some of those programs. Our administration has obviously been trimmed down. I feel fortunate to be working with John and Susan, and I can guarantee folks that we're going to put our best foot forward, and we're going to work extremely hard, and we're going to make sure our kids get what they need. Along with that, our administrative assistants. Everybody's being asked to do a little bit more with less. So we're currently in the phase of looking at all of the job descriptions, all of the roles and responsibilities, and then we're going to diversify that and kind of sprinkle that out to see which groups need what. So we may have our assistant principals with one administrative assistant. We may have one administrative assistant for guidance and attendance, say. So we are in the process of ironing that out, identifying those roles, and then we'll be rolling that out and implementing that strategy. Our building leadership teams. We have 2 separate buildings with lots of team leaders. What's the best structure for us to move forward in a 6 through 12 model, allowing teacher and faculty input and having those folks be our team leaders and spokespeople when they go back to their teams and talk with folks that they work with their neighbors next door of how do we best implement CBE. and how's that best going to support our students. What do we have for staffing? I think we have staffing in place that's going to allow for opportunities. And if we have classes in the high school, and I'll use art, for example, if we have a space open and we have an 8th grader that really meets that criteria of, boy, this person loves graphic arts and we have an extra seat, why isn't that student in that seat? Well, now they can, because our schedule allows that. A couple of examples of that would be our unified arts we're going to look at. We've already started working on a pilot program in one of our foreign language classes where we may have a group of students that experiment with that movement when ready type of situation. We also have technology education. We have a wonderful technology. We have a wood shop. We have all kinds of engineering tools. And that teacher also works with students in 6 through 12. Our media center right now, I'm pleased to say that we're going to be sprucing that up with some new furniture, and Amy is thrilled, and it's going to be more conducive to using that structure from grades 6 through 12, and that's already in place. So physical resources as classroom spaces. We have space in the high school here with some open rooms. How are we going to best utilize that? Currently, right now, we share equipment in a supply closet with grades 6 through 8. So a lot of the resources we have currently, we also share. We have one special ed coordinator right now with grades 6 through 12. How do we best utilize those resources and support her? Our guidance team, we're going to try to make a move so that we have our guidance team working together. So we have 3 counselors, 2 female counselors, 1 male counselor. We have a common area where they can meet with kids. We have an area where we can bring in outside counseling. How do we best meet their needs? And lastly, when you hear a lot about what used to be called response to instruction or multi-tiered systems of supports, really, we've created an early warning system here at the high school. I did a lot of work in the middle school, and Susan and Kobe have done a fantastic job supporting students with math and reading interventions. We continue to do that in the high school, but we've also built in the social emotional component and the behavioral component. So we have a system that wraps around students, and we bring students of concern up every single week. We communicate with parents and teachers. We put in interventions. We monitor that kind of thing. So how is we going to best do that 6 through 12, combining both of those resources? So those are the things that we're faced with. Currently, we're almost there with the structural, which door we're going to use and who's going to have this office. And, you know, I may be moving or John may be moving or Susan may be moving, but we have a team together here that is willing to work with each other and in the best interest of kids. And that's, those of you that know me know that my decisions are always grounded in what's best for students. And now we have the support team along with that. So Krista, if you like, you can go to the next slide, but all that says is questions, and the team is here to answer any questions that you might have.
Brian, great job. I just want to elaborate on 2 things. One is that community building. Right at that beginning of the year, we are already working on combining the staff as well and incorporating some team building opportunities for the staff to come together and to support each other and to learn what everyone does. The other piece is those office space. I know we talked about a lot about it, probably because we've met a lot about it, and people have had a lot to say, and we've had lots of meetings about what they feel is appropriate. But there's an underlying philosophy that we want to support each other. And that's where I felt it was important to have John and Susan with each other and sharing responsibility, not split responsibilities of Susan's all 6-8 and John's all high school. That doesn't support our future goals of where we want to be. The same is true for our guidance department. We are going to have to look at what the current responsibilities of our staff are and reassign those that. And so to help support that, I wanted them to be together. I think that that's really supportive. Also, the last thing we want is a student to show show up and only have female counselors or only have a male counselor. I think this is another great opportunity where we can play to the strengths of the current staff and better meet the needs of our students by looking at that, taking the time and reflecting on that. And we build that community by supporting each other. And as Brian already pointed out, the admin assistants, we did lose one in the budget cuts as well. And so now we're in the midst of not only reassigning spaces, but some of those roles and how best to support that. We're feeling that we can do this, and we are super excited about it. The last piece about building the community isn't just about the staff and the structure and how we're going to support each other, but it's also about our students. And we're going to be developing a common vision around what those principles are that we want to explicitly teach during advisory program, and have people develop that advisory program that says this is important to us. We've identified that through Portrait of the Graduate. The whole community has had a say in what is important to us. So if it's important to us, I don't just want it painted on a wall somewhere. I want it painted on a wall, and I want students to have opportunities to be explicitly taught those and have also be recognized when they're doing great things. And we are looking at whole school assemblies where older students can be role models for our younger students, and younger students can be role models for our older students. We can recognize when they are meeting those principles that we have agreed that are important to all of us, and that help educate each of us to meet those. So I'm excited about what's happening. I know it's a lot of work ahead of us, but I'm proud of the team and what work they've already done. And I know that we can accomplish this. And now's the time to express to you how we plan on doing that, and then welcome your input and welcome the student input in that creation of this shared vision. So one last thing before any other administrators, before we turn it over to questions, do any of you have anything else you would like to add that I might have forgot or Brian forgot, or anything else you want to add?
I think you guys covered everything.
All right, then we will turn it over to questions. If there's any questions, please let us know, or you can type them into the chat too, if that makes you feel more comfortable. We had one comment already. Oh, there are some in the chat. Let me open the chat.
I think those are previous comments.
Oh, they are. Yeah. But if you have one, put it in the chat, or you can open it up.
Bill, I'm going to ask one more question. Do we have
Michelle,
any concerns?
I'm glad you have
I'm
the
sorry.
courage to ask questions.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm here. Is there any concerns with our accreditation by combining the two schools? I know that we probably have to go through something or some kind of process to update that information. I just want to make sure that's being handled, or if there's any issues that we have to look at.
That's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up. It was one of the questions the staff had as well. So both schools are accredited by NEASC at this time, both the middle school and high school. And in fact, when I spoke to NEASC, I called them up and I talked to them. I said, well, what do I need to do? And I asked that question. And in NEASC eyes, they were already considered one building because they've already report out together. Both Kobe and Brian had to give their updated reports together because the buildings were physically joined together. They had already categorized us as one building. So there is absolutely no concern from NEASC whatsoever around the accreditation. The accreditation process will continue when next time it's due, and it's coming up. Actually, we are going to be starting that work in a little bit, and we're excited about that work because, again, if you've ever gone through the NEASC accreditation, it's a great opportunity for someone to come in from the outside to give us a reflection on what we're doing well and what they might give us as pointers to work on in the future. So I think it's great timing for what we have for the NEASC accreditation, and there is no concern whatsoever with any consideration of losing that or otherwise.
All right, thank you.
We have a question in the chat, Bill, from Shana Mateg.
Yeah, I read it. Yeah.
Okay.
Have there been any conversations about how we can increase the number of honors and or AP classes offered? Yeah, so we have had just at the last board meeting, we had a conversation about moving forward with more of the Latin honor system. And the Latin honor system is one of the things that we're going to be coming under review for the next couple of years. And we're really excited about that. and this is just me brainstorming. This is not a decision yet, Shayna. So please understand that we want people to give input, but the Latin honor system as proposed right now is based solely off of GPA. And I want to value the work that's been done to this already. However, I think there's other things that are as important as GPA and even things that might be more important than GPA. And some of those are the rigor of our students. And so one of the things that's come to mind is that, let's say the cum laude is the standard diploma for Epping High School. Here's your 20, I'll get it wrong, 22 credits that you need to graduate, certain number of math, certain number of sciences, and so forth. Then if you wanted to go with magna cum laude, we're going to increase that. We're going to say, well, you need another math, you need another science, and you need 15, 20 hours of community service. We want to increase the rigor and opportunities for our students, but we also want to entice them. We want to encourage them to push and work harder, because we know as adults that hard work pays off because it sets the foundation for them to be able to do that. Then the same thing with summa cum laude. We say you got to do 100 hours of community service and you have to do 2 art classes and 2 PEs or whatever that committee comes up with. So we are looking at increasing that rigor as we redefine the Latin honor system as we move forward. As far as honors and AP, a lot of that is dependent on students. And if we have enough students to support their own AP class, that's one thing that we can do. Unfortunately, when some of the drawbacks of a small building is we might have 4 students that need an AP class or an honors class. And then we end up combining classes because there's no other financial way to say, here's part of your teaching load is for these 6 students. But we are looking at it, and I think technology helps. And another idea that came up is around AP and possibly sharing resources with Raymond and other surrounding schools that might have some of the same issues we do. Maybe we can combine some efforts with AP classes with synchronous teaching. And so there are, I think COVID has given us some positive things to investigate in moving forward. Jordan has a comment. Currently, sports procedures are handled differently between the schools. Middle school has a weekly teacher sign-off sheet, etc. Will these practices be combined, changed, still separate? I don't need an answer now, but something to discuss. Well, it looks like Jordan, Susan wants to give that a shot. So Susan, go ahead.
Thank you for asking that, Jordan, because we alluded to the fact that John Adams and I have been working collaboratively to create one common parent student handbook. So this handbook, John and I have been going through it page by page, and this has been a really great practice because it's allowed us to really look at, oh, we need to revisit this, or this really applies to students in grades 6 through 8. So we're feeling like there will be some things that we will do differently because we want to make sure that we're still honoring, students' developmental needs. So grades 6 through 8, we may have some certain sets of guidelines like you're talking to with regards to the sign-off sheet. The middle school, we don't look at necessarily grades for student participation in athletics, but what we look at is, are they doing work? Are they being a good student? So as we go through our handbook and create this common handbook, John and I have decided, along and having conversations with Brian and Bill, that there still will be differences between how we, the expectations of our 6 through 8 students as compared to our 9 through 12. One of those being grading for right now until we do get to that part of our process of transition. So I believe that for now we will have kind of those differences. Does that answer your question, Jordan?
Thank you. All right, I saw 2 more. First, I'll tackle Tyler's, and then I'll get to A. Smith. Tyler, how do we do this with the reduction in staff? And that's changing how we do things now. I'm going to talk about traditional schooling, and I'm going to talk briefly about what part of our vision of Move When Ready schooling might look like. And so, for example, traditionally, you might have students that are all in Algebra 1 in the same classroom, and you might have an honors Algebra 1 in that classroom, or you might even have an Algebra 2. But the point is they're all learning algebra, concepts of algebra, and they're all on different levels of progression along that. every teacher knows that when you get a class of 20 students, they're actually all in different levels anyways, even if they're grouped together. They all have different strengths and weaknesses, and we need to be better at identifying what those strengths and weaknesses are. And we need to be better at making sure that they get what they need, not just deliver, here's the concept for today, whether you need it or not. And so what you're going to start seeing is teachers are changing their role. They're going to start changing their role to be more like coaches. They're going to start using a lot of the technological advances that we have to help identify where students are and start assisting those students. They might then get better at grouping students in 2 or 3 student partners for this particular concept, because that's where they're at. Or you might have a whole class activity because they all need help on this. So we really need to start looking at that. And that is something that Brian, Principal Ernest, alluded to when he talked about world language. We're starting to do this in world language. Our world language teachers have developed some ways to make sure our students are progressing where they need to be. But it's okay to have French 1 and French 2 students in the same room together. And so we're really changing the old model of instruction of, here's the concept for today, and here's some practice in that concept, and then you give me back that concept, where we really have to get better as an institution of identifying what are your needs and how do I meet those needs. And that's something I think elementary teachers have traditionally done very well with reading groups and different leveled readers, and they assess where the students are at, and then they give them what they need. And that's what we kind of see the high school moving to as well, a high school, middle school moving to as well. Are there concerns about middle school students being in contact all day in the same entrances, offices with high school students? So Susan, I'm going to tackle this first,
Okay.
and then you can. And I've heard this question a couple of times. And here's what I find interesting about this. Our 6th graders and 12th graders ride the same bus in. So in my opinion, they can walk in the same door. I guess why would they get off the bus at 2 different spots? It just doesn't pass the common sense logic test for me. Then we already, as we've already talked about, our middle school gym is in the middle of the high school. They use the media center that's already shared by both sets of students. The cafeteria is already shared by both sets of students. So I don't think there's any more mixing than what's already going on in the buildings. So no, I do not have concerns about middle school students with high school students, because they're currently in contact with them every day, all day. They share a nurse's office. They pass each other in the hallway all the time, to the middle school gym, to the middle school cafeteria, to the middle school media center, which, by the way, are the high school cafeteria. You see my point. So Susan, I'm sorry, I just had to answer that one. What's your
everything Bill has said is so true. We do really have a lot of combining of our students, but also too, if you are a parent that is like concerned about this, also there is still some separation, which is actually kind of organic in our building. Our 6th grade and our 7th grade pods, where a majority of students' classes are actually upstairs in our building. So there really would be no need, there is no need for a high school student to travel in that area. And really where we may have more mixing, I guess, of our students in grades 9 through 12 and 6 through 8 would be just in one major hallway where there already is that mixing, because as Bill had said, this is kind of that hub where the nurse's office is and that. So I don't foresee anything major as a change as how the building looks, as far as like, you know, all of these really large people, you know, crowding over little kids. I'm feeling pretty confident about it. I hope that answers your question.
I see Chris Sousa's question. Chris, yes, the question is, so I guess I got ahead of myself in that, yes, you may have multiple curriculum being taught in the same classroom. It depends on obviously the number of students and so forth. If we have enough students for just Algebra 1, then that's clearly what we're going to be doing, and we're going to try to group students based on their needs and so forth, but not just based on their grade level, but based on their competency level. And that is a bit of a difference, where you're very familiar that right now we promote children by age. We don't promote children by whether they're ready for it or not. And don't get me going, this is not a competency-based education conversation, but obviously that doesn't do our students well, because they end up getting into those classrooms, and then the teachers might struggle to meet their needs because the whole classroom is grouped differently, and that's not how they've set up their instruction. Their instruction is, I had the assumption every child is at this level, so I'm going to teach this level whether you're ready for it or not. So that is what I'm saying, is we have to get better at identifying where our students are at whatever curriculum it is, and better meeting their needs. So then, Chris, you're in education, the Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, we needed to know if we teach it too high or we teach it too low, we might as well not be teaching it, because we're losing them. And then they get bored and they don't learn. So we owe it to our students to start adjusting, meeting them where they're at, and not just promoting them by grade. So I don't know if I answered the whole question, Chris, but as always, you know how to reach me, and I'd be more than happy to answer your thoughts. But to ease people's fears, that's many years down the road. We'll take baby steps. We'll pilot that. We'll get teachers ready. We'll get students ready. And we are going to keep moving forward with trying to meet students where they're at, because we know educationally that's what's right for them. Sean had a comment a little bit with 8th grade pod in the band chorus room too. Sean, do you want to elaborate? I don't quite follow now. I'm sorry.
Well, that was just around the discussion of mixing. The music department is one of the departments that is shared between 6 through 12. And so we actually really love having the closeness with the 8th grade pod and the high schoolers as well.
Oh,
I don't know if we have someone who's trying to talk or not, but thank you, Sean. A. Smith again, they don't really share spaces. It seems like there has been an effort to separate them, seating on buses separated by grade. So yes, clearly we're aware of students developmentally, and I think as Susan was trying to point out, is that yes, there is still some separation that's appropriate for students, but the building is designed currently, and they do share spaces. They do share spaces currently, so I don't know how different that will look, but I don't see it as I don't know the right words I'm looking for. They do share spaces. It is what happened. I've been in the nurse's office, and we've had middle schoolers and high schoolers in there at the same time. We do share spaces.
Could I just speak on that, maybe to alleviate some hesitancy? In the media center, that's a shared space where high school students and middle school students are both in there. And I see that as a really good opportunity for our high school students to be good role models for our 6th graders. And they have definitely lived up to that. They're on their best behavior. They act appropriately. I see some difference in their mannerisms when middle schoolers are in there and when they're not. So I just think that it's a really great learning experience for both the middle and high school.
Amy, I'm thankful that you're on the call, and also to alleviate people's fear. Amy, physically, we all know where the media center is. It's in the heart of the high school. So what we currently call the high school. So this is what I meant by when I said being an outsider coming in. To me, it's always been one building. It's designed as one building. Jordan, not happening in some high school classrooms. Yes, this is where we're moving towards. Clearly, teachers do need professional development. We need to develop that expectation. We need to support teachers in that role. And I agree. Most high school classrooms, not just here, in a lot of places, are very traditional. And traditional has its place, but it doesn't necessarily have its place to be continued, and it needs to evolve as well. So yes, I agree. There has to be more teachers. And then there's just a follow-up comment by Chris. Identifying multiple levels in one course is one thing, multiple levels in one class with multiple curricula is another. Yes, I imagine. I can't imagine that as a teacher. Thank you for clarifying that, Chris. Other questions? I really appreciate it. And some things about Zoom do make it easy when you feel comfortable typing in a question. I hope that you've learned a lot. I hope that you're excited as we are. I hope that you volunteer and become part of the opportunities to help guide this shared vision. I really do appreciate this community and the support it continues to show. I have to say the team of administrators that got us this far in this short amount of time during COVID. I'm so proud of the work that our scheduling committee did, that our administrators have done, and our admin assistants, and identifying different things. Even with all the other things that we have going on, we've made great progress, and I can't say that would have happened without the efforts of all of the team to make it happen. So I just want to say a huge thank you to that team. And again, be on the lookout for your opportunities to get involved and stay involved. We really appreciate it. Any last comments from our administrators?
Can I add something, Bill? I'm seeing people kind of chat, which thank you for sharing positive words about being excited about moving forward. I think all of us are too. I think we're really excited about building, a larger community. And we've been doing, like Bill said, a lot of really great things to do that. And there's going to be some really great things happening.
I almost spilled the beans, Susan. I was so excited. And I don't know if you shared it with staff yet, like some of the team building stuff that you've organized already for staff. So I won't share it publicly here yet. But we know we have to be a team, and we're going to work together, and we're going to continue to learn from each other. So, and that includes you giving us the feedback we need to hear from the parent perspective, the student perspective. So we know whether it's working or not working. So I'm going to call it a night. I don't see any other questions. I appreciate all the work you've done. We're going to make the slideshow available to everyone. As I said, we'll make the link available for everyone to watch and stay caught up on the opportunities that we have. So thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you, team. Great job.
Thanks, Deb.
Bye, thank you.